Welcome to the programme. The head of Les Républicains, Éric Ciotti, has called for an alliance between his party and the far-right national rally of Marine Le Pen. It is a huge moment in French politics, just 3 weeks ahead of the snap general election, with polls suggesting the far-right could be within touching distance of power. Well, let's start by listening to why he is endorsing that alliance.
I think there is a need today to serve the country which is in danger. There is on one side this unholy alliance with the Left France Unbowed Party, who today project extremely dangerous ideas, and notably ideas which spread anti-Semitism. There was this alliance last night, so there is this big bloc. On the other side, there is this Macronist bloc, which has threatened the country today with more violence and insecurity. And then there is a bloc on the right, a national bloc. The Republicans have made sure we have a strong voice, but today are too weak to oppose the two most dangerous blocs. So we need an alliance, while remaining ourselves and avoiding the dangers of France Unbowed, who tomorrow could have a majority. So we need an alliance.
Well, reaction to that statement by Ciotti pouring in this afternoon, and divisions within the party are already starting to emerge. The head of Les Républicains within the Senate is calling this afternoon for Ciotti himself to resign. Well, let's go live to the headquarters of the party of Les Républicains. Our reporter Clovis Casali is standing by for us there. And Clovis, look, clearly huge divisions today playing out in public. What can you tell us?
It's clearly a shock announcement by Éric Ciotti, and it's going to cause huge turmoil in the party. It already is. Nadia, it's been a tradition for the right-wing party, Les Républicains, and before that it was called the UMP. It was in power with President Nicolas Sarkozy. It was a tradition until now to never make an alliance, to never negotiate with the far right. And it's all changed now with Éric Ciotti, who's made this shock announcement saying that now, given the electoral results of recent years, only 7% they got in the European election, well, Les Républicains were not strong enough to stand alone and therefore had to make an alliance with the far right in order to save France. That's what they say. Éric Ciotti came here to the party headquarters after that announcement. He answered some of our questions. He said that you can't stigmatize the French people who voted for the National Rally, the French far-right party. There have been negotiations already between Ciotti and Bardella and Marine Le Pen, but I can tell you it's causing deep divisions within the Republican Party, Les Républicains, with Michel Barnier, for instance. Remember, he was the chief negotiator on Brexit, also a former French minister. Well, he, like many senators, all the Republican senators actually, saying that Éric Ciotti, their boss, has lost all legitimacy, that he needs to leave the party. On the other hand, you've got one MP here representing the youths at the Republican Party saying that he would prefer to see Bardella Prime Minister than Gabriel Attal.
So, Clovis, clearly, as you say, divisions within Les Républicains this afternoon. There are many within the party that aren't happy with what Éric Ciotti has said. But outside of the party, within the far right, Jordan Bardella, for one, says he quite likes this idea. What can you tell us about the other political reactions to this bombshell news today?
Well, it's not surprising. The French far right delighted by Éric Ciotti's announcement, because for years Marine Le Pen has been trying to normalise, if you will, her party, change its image, make sure that people here in France don't see it as too extreme, see it as fit to govern. And that's why she's been calling for years to form this bloc at the right wing, including people from Les Républicains, people from sovereignist movements, basically trying to gather the right wing around her. That's what Marine Le Pen has been trying to do, and that's why she's calling Éric Ciotti's decision brave, the sign that he's a man of courage. Jordan Bardella has taken to Twitter also to say exactly the same thing. And then you've got the left wing, appalled by the decision. Some came here this morning and this afternoon. We spoke to them. Some left-wing MPs telling us we are back in the 1930s when we witnessed the rise of fascism in Europe. It's happening again. and Les Républicains, what is a right-wing or centre-right party, now making an alliance with the far-right National Rally. Well, it's like making an alliance with Marshal Pétain and Nazis. That's what the left-wing MPs we've been talking to have been saying, also calling this decision unacceptable, and of course calling all the French people to now back the left-wing bloc in the coming parliamentary elections.
Clovis Casali at the headquarters of Les Républicains this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed. Well, let's get some analysis on all of this for you. I'm joined live on the programme now by Renaud Foucart. He's from the University of Lancaster in the United Kingdom, where he focuses on French politics and economy. Can I just get your reaction this afternoon, first of all, to Eric Ciotti's comments? A huge moment for the right here in France.
Yes, it's a very big moment. I wouldn't say it was completely unpredictable, because there was a strong tendency of the conservative right that a lot of the so-called centrist or more government-like people had already left towards the center. And so Ciotti was trying to continue to exist in between center-right and the far-right. But his decision now is very important. It's very important because it will force clarification for the last people who stayed among the Republicans, because the Republicans is relatively small at the presidential election. It was relatively small at the European election, but they still have a strong parliamentary base. And so now he's going to try to run as many possible candidates of Les Républicains for the next election, despite a lot of his party trying to leave him. But those candidates will offer a fig leaf for some voters who don't want to vote for the far right, but will nonetheless be voting for an alliance with the far right. And that might be the key for a possible, something that was completely unlikely yesterday, but for a possible majority for Le Pen.
That is quite a thought indeed. And look, you say Les Républicains, in terms of numbers, are relatively small at the moment in Parliament. But in terms of modern French history, this party has played a central role in French politics. The likes of Nicolas Sarkozy hailing from this party, all the way back, of course, to Charles de Gaulle as well. But given the divisions that we're seeing playing out in public today, are we starting to see the fracturing of Les Républicains? Can the party survive in the form that it is now?
No, it is completely exploding right now. If you're following the events minute by minute, people are resigning or saying they call for Ciotti to resign. The interesting point, perhaps, is that Ciotti was picked as a non-threatening figure as the head of Les Républicains, because he was not himself planning to run for the supreme job of president in 2027. But now, as the president, despite having nobody behind him among the leaders of Les Républicains, he made that decision, huge decision, and everyone has to position, either leave the party or call him to resign, which seems very difficult, or try to organize a change of leader. But how much time do they have? The election is coming right now. So yes, this is imploding. Some people will try to run by themselves. Some will leave politics. Some might try to join Macron. But this has huge consequences. And this is the end of the experiment of Macron, who has already destroyed a lot of what was the historical center-left, and now it's finished. The center-right is gone in the way it existed until yesterday.
You don't think some of the figures within Les Républicains who aren't happy with what Eric Ciotti had to say today may come to join Macron's movement ahead of the election in 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think that's the most likely. If not formally, they might have informal agreement in which Macron will not run against any one of them. It was already announced on the day of the dissolution. Stéphane Séjourné said there would be no candidate against incumbents that are not from the far right. And so in that way, it gives, again, a fig leaf for Les Républicains, people who don't want to run with Macron, to still run without any centrist opponent. But what I'm more worried about is what will happen when there will be Les Républicains from Eric Ciotti's party, so running as a far-right candidate in front of traditional Les Républicains who would try to keep their seats. So this is going to be very difficult. Also, we're going to see what voters think and whether they accept this deal of we are your traditional center-right party. We used to call you to make a blockade against fascism, to fight against Jean-Marie Le Pen in 22, but no, this is different. Vote for us. So will those traditional center-right voters agree to vote for candidates of Ciotti with the ultimate goal of backing a Le Pen prime minister? I mean, a Bardella prime minister, but a Le Pen-backed prime minister.
as you say, huge turbulence today on the right and the far right of French politics. Let's talk briefly, though, about what's happening on the left as well, because 4 left-wing parties yesterday announced a broad electoral pact saying they would work together in a bid to keep the far right from power. Before I ask you a question, let's just have a listen to a little of what was said yesterday.
This means we will be working together to put forward joint candidates in the first round of the parliamentary elections who will defend a programme that prioritises the urgent social, ecological and democratic battles. It's a first step, and we will be continuing to work over the coming hours to ensure that we're ready in the days to come, because the battle is about to begin.
We are a country rising up today and saying no to the far right and yes to democracy, yes to the left. Thank you for coming out today. Keep it up.
We signed a document with 7 political organisations and launched an appeal for more people to join us tomorrow. I think there are already 15 or so political organisations that have joined this appeal this evening. Tomorrow, I hope we'll reach 20 or so, and that this very broad gathering will enable us to go all the way to victory.
And Mr. Foucart, we have 4 main parties in that tentative alliance, the Greens, the Socialists, La France Insoumise, and the Communists. Can that alliance hold together over the next 3 weeks? And can it stop that new alliance of the far right and the right getting to power?
So there will be a huge pressure on the parties of the left to go forward on that agreement in principle. There are huge difficulties. One of the major difficulties is that the incumbents, MPs from this alliance, are mostly from the far left, La France Insoumise, while the party that did by far the best in the European election is the Social Democrat, Parti Socialiste. So they will have to fight to pick the seats, to pick the candidates. They will have some disagreement on the program, but they've made an agreement, and I think very quickly, which is for them a very good sign. Now, we're going to see 3 forces fighting in the first round of the French election. It will be as clear as it ever got in recent French history. But as you know, the French elections have 2 rounds. So I think the big key to know what will happen next is what will be the decisions of the center when they will face a second round in which a candidate from the left is facing a candidate from the far right, and what will be the decision of the left facing a center versus far right fight. You also need to know that at the end, the prime minister is chosen by the president. And of course, if there is an alternative majority, so if there is an actual majority of more than 50% of the seats for the far right, he will have to pick someone for the far right. But at the moment, it seems a very likely scenario is that there is a hung parliament with 3 blocks, and it's not even clear which one is the biggest. And if the far right has, say, 40% of the seats, Macron does not need to choose a prime minister from the far right. So there will have to be a huge amount of discussion and a huge amount of soul searching within all the political parties after that election and between the first and the second round. And this is completely uncharted territory at the moment.
It's been fascinating to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Renaud Foucart talking to us there. Thank you very much. Well, our reporter Claire Paccalin is with me in the studio now. She's also been covering the developments of the last few days very closely. And Claire, look, good to talk to you about this as well. On Sunday night, when the results of the European elections were coming in, you were with the president's party, Renaissance, when the president himself made that extraordinary announcement that he was calling a snap election. As I say, you've been covering the party closely since then. This afternoon, what's the latest with the party itself?
Well, they're trying to put on a brave face, saying that they are defiant. This announcement of these snap elections was definitely a shock to them. I was in the room and people were clearly very, very shocked. But now they're saying, you know, work, work, work was what someone I spoke to on the phone, a member of the party I spoke to on the phone a little earlier on. Work, work, work. We've got to move forwards, onwards and upwards. Now saying that the president's decision to call these snap elections was a good one because it's a chance, an election campaign is a chance to listen to the legitimate concerns of French people. And serious circumstance, so the far right doing so well in the European elections, calls for a serious response, these snap elections. So there'll be a meeting this evening at 6 o'clock at the headquarters of Renaissance, so Emmanuel Macron's party. And Emmanuel Macron will speak tomorrow as well. So we'll get a bit more understanding of what their strategy and what their game plan is in the next few hours.
One thing we do know, though, is that if the polls are right, there may well be members of Macron's party who lose seats, who lose their jobs in 3 and 4 weeks' time. The president, it looks like, has taken an enormous risk here, hasn't he?
It is an enormous risk. He is a risk taker.
Yeah.
That's in his nature. Look back a bit at his background. He launched a party in April 2016, his own political party. A year later, he was president. A few weeks after that, he won a massive majority in the national parliament, in the lower house of parliament, the Assemblée Nationale. He lost that majority, though, 2 years ago. So by calling these snap elections, it's not as if he's throwing away a majority in parliament. He doesn't have one. So certainly some of his members of parliament may lose their seats. They've got 3 weeks now to campaign to try and keep them. And it was very much a big shock to them. But he's not throwing a majority away. And he says that he can't go on business as usual. This is just not something he can do, given the seriousness, he says, of the situation. He couldn't just stand by and let things carry on as they are.
Well, shed a little light for us, Claire, if you can, on what's going on behind the scenes in the party, because Macron's Prime Minister Gabriel Attal was meeting with members of the party this morning. Do we know what his message was to them? Do we know the kind of concerns that they've been airing?
I think the Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, first of all, he was making it clear that he understood that they were concerned and that they had been taken by surprise. They're back on the campaign trail unexpectedly. He said to them, I know this is brutal for you and your staff, but what we need to do now is, according to Attal, expose the incoherency of the far right's policies. He says that he told the members of Parliament this morning, members of his party, of the Renaissance members of Parliament, he said, look, according to him, the far right coming to power would be a financial and social KO, or KO in French, which stands for knockout. So basically what he means by that is that far right coming to power, Jordan Bardella potentially becoming the next prime minister, would destroy the finances and the social makeup of this country. And that's the kind of thing we need to make clear. That's the message we need to tell French people now, that if Bardella were to come to power and become prime minister, he'd make a mess of it. Of course, though, you have Bardella, you have Marine Le Pen saying, oh, no, we're ready. We've been ready for a while. They even have a group, a special team, who are the sort of Matignon, that's the Prime Minister's office. They're the team whose strategy, whose goal is to try and pave the way for the far right to come to power. So they say, no, we are more than ready.
It's going to be a fascinating few weeks. Claire Paccalin, thanks very much indeed. And as you heard there from Claire, tomorrow morning, President Macron is to give a news conference. It is to be at 11 o'clock local time here in Paris. We'll bring you that live here on the channel, so do tune in if you can.